In our last video, we set up our content on our site. In this video, we're going to look at how to change the layout of those pieces of content, as well as the overall look and feel of the site. First, let's take a quick look at how do we modify the layout of a specific content type. If we go to Structure, Content Types, and then any of these content types, let's say the plan for instance, you'll notice this Manage Display link. Let's go ahead and click that. In the Manage Display, we have the ability to drag and drop fields into a different order than they actually appear. If we look at our final site and look at our plans and pricing, we'll see that we have the title, the body, the price, and then this image floating. Well, we'll get into detail a little bit more about how we made that happen. But for now, what we can see is that the image should probably come first, followed by the body and the price. So let's go ahead and do that. We'll also note that there is no label for the icon, and that the label for price is actually displayed inline. And we'll go ahead and click Save. One more thing. See this original image floating out over here? Well, we can go ahead and we can click the little widget icon, and we can change that. Let's go ahead and make it a 100 by 100 thumbnail, and let's link it to its piece of content. Great. Now, you'll notice that we just updated the default display. We also have the teaser display. Now we're going to set this up very similar, but what we're going to do is we're going to leave the body as a trimmed version of text. We're going to trim it to a very Twitter length of 140 characters. This is going to be a hard stop on the number of characters that are displayed, and we'll cut at the word boundary, so you don't have to worry about a word only getting spelled halfway out. For our original image, we're going to go ahead and again make this the thumbnail and link it to its piece of content. And we're going to go ahead and click Save. Oh, got to fix those labels real quick. Let's do that. Now if we go back to our default display, we'll see it's set up just a little bit differently. And one thing I noticed here is we're linking to the content in the default display. We probably don't want to do this because the default display is what's going to happen when we look at this specific piece of content. And that will seem rather circular to users. So let's go ahead and undo that. You'll also notice that we have custom display settings. So we can turn on other things like full content, RSS, search index, search result, and tokens, and style these things however we want as well. For now, we're just going to leave those turned off. We'll just save the whole thing. And now our plan is set up differently. If we go back to our site, let's say we go to our piece of plan content, and we go to drop in. What do we see? We see our image is resized and at the top. We have our body displayed, and we have the label for price in line. All right, we're making some progress here. So we could do this again for events, we could do this for articles, we could do this for pages, etc. That's going to be pretty handy. But let's just leave those things alone for now. If you want to build them out, just take a look at our demo site and see if you can figure out how they were constructed. Now, these two sites look drastically different from one another. So let's go ahead and do something about that. Let's go ahead and click Appearance. By default, Bartik is going to be our front-end theme, our theme that our end users see, and 7 is going to be our administration theme. What we want to do is we want to have a mobile-friendly website. And to do this, the most easy theme to work with is responsive Bartik. So let's go ahead and enable and set default on that. Alright, now responsive Bartik is the default theme, as you can see. Similarly to how we added modules, we could also install new themes. So we could install a new theme from the URL we get from Drupal.org, or we could upload it. But for our purposes, we already have the theme we want, and we already have the majority of the changes that we need to make to our theme. So let's go ahead and click Settings under Responsive Bartik and finish configuring it. Bartik makes use of the color module that's installed with Drupal core so that you can change colors on things. For our purposes, we're going to go ahead and set this up to look like the final site. We can probably just change the header in all intents and purposes. And let's just take a look at the final product. Looks like our footer is set up the same way. So let's go ahead and set up our footer the similar way. So our footer background, let's make it the same color, 1B, 1B, 1B. For our title and slogan, let's make it pure white. And we'll leave the other things the same. Under toggle display, there's several things we can turn on or off. For our website, we're really just going to use the logo. So we can turn the site name and the site slogan off. We can also disable the secondary menu. Just for reference, our secondary menu are those user menu links that are appearing up here on the front end of our website. Now, since we've added them to our main menu, we don't really need that. Let's go ahead and uncheck secondary menu. Also, we want to provide our own custom logo and shortcut icon. So let's go ahead and uncheck Use Custom Logo, and let's choose a file. And the same for our custom fav icon, which is the little thing you see up here. Right now it's a little Drupal icon. We want it to be this little green widget Drupal icon. And let's go ahead and save configuration. And let's take a look at the front end of our site. All right, we're making some progress. It's more or less about the same. Obviously, there's a whole bunch of content stuff that still needs to be done and some layout things that need to be fixed. One of those layout things is the sidebar. On our development site right now, we have the sidebar floating to the left, whereas on our final site, the sidebar is floating to the right. We also have different things in our sidebar. So let's go ahead and take a look at how we might add those different things and elements to the other side. So in order to do this, we're going to use the block system. Drupal's block system is its default layout tool. Panels adds on to this, as well as views. Views will provide blocks for the block system, and panels just completely takes over this functionality if wanted. So under structure, we're going to go to blocks. So each theme has regions. If we want to look at what those regions are, we can click this Demonstrate Regions button. And you'll see here we have a header, featured section, a sidebar first, highlighted sidebar second, help, content, our triptych first, middle, and last, our footer first, second, third, fourth, and our final footer. For our purposes, we're really going to use less than half of these. So let's exit block region demonstration. Let's go ahead and configure this a little bit. So one thing I know is sidebar first isn't where I want my sidebar to live. I want to use sidebar second so it's on the right side. So let's go ahead, just drag and drop user login there. And you know what? Let's get rid of navigation since we're not using it. Let's get rid of search as well. So right now we just have user login. On our final site, we have a couple other things, but let's just leave that for now. And let's go ahead and click Save Blocks and just confirm that this worked. Back home. Strange, that didn't work. Well, the reason there's nothing in the sidebar is because we've set user login and we're a logged in user. User login by default won't show to logged in users because they don't need to do that again. So let's go ahead and let's add some other stuff to the site so that we get things in the sidebar. One of those things we can add is a custom block. To add a custom block, we just click Add Block. We can give this block a title, such as Disclaimer. Block description can be Disclaimer. And the block body, let's just copy this thing from the footer of the website for time being. And then when we set that up, we have region settings. So we're using responsive Bartik. So when we set a custom block, we can just add it right then and there. In this case, we want to throw it in Sidebar second. And we want it to display on all those pages. If we didn't want to display on a specific page like the front page, we could do less than front greater than. Or if we didn't want it to display on about, we could say about. Or even more, if we didn't want it to display on any events, we could do events/star, which is a wildcard. So anything, events or events and anything underneath it won't show this block. For our purposes, we're just going to leave that as is. Note, we can also restrict this to specific pieces of content. We can restrict it to only plans, events, basic pages, articles, web forms, or any combination of those. We could also restrict this by role. This is similar to how user login works. User login will only show to anonymous users. So if we only wanted this to show up to people who are logged in, we could check authenticated user. Or if we only wanted this to show to administrator role, we could do administrator. For our purposes, we want everybody to see it, so we'll leave not restricted. And finally, users could customize this. So users could turn it on or off, basically. Well, not many cases I'm going to let this be user configurable, so I'm just going to leave that as not customizable. And we'll say save block. Now let's go back to our home page and take a look. Awesome. Now we have a block. And it's floating to the right. Just what we wanted. Now, before we go about configuring some of the other things we need to make this site look and feel as the final site does, let's take a quick step and look at web forms, which we didn't cover in the previous video. So the web form is the thing we're going to use for our contact page. If we look at our final site, we see we have information about hours, a map, and a form. So let's go ahead and add a web form. In this case, we're going to call it contact. For our body, it's going to be all of this content here, including our map. How are we going to add that map? Well, I know it's a Google map, and I know Google Maps is an iframe, which is embedding a piece of another website into your website. If we take a look at that, we can inspect the element on the map and find the iframe piece. So if we copy that iframe, let's try and see what happens when we paste it in. It's going to look like that. Not what we want. I could also paste it in a source, which will probably get us something closer, but I have a feeling it's not going to work. So let's take a look. We're just going to take a look at our body fields real quick. Nope, didn't work. Why not? Let's go back to edit. So we could change the text format to full HTML, which supports a lot more tags, including the iframe tag. And we could look at that source again and see that our previous paste got stripped out. So let's go ahead and repaste that in. And since we selected full HTML, it will render as the map, which is going to be awesome because that's exactly what we want. In this case, we want the web form to be part of our menu, so let's go ahead and add that menu now. We can change the weight of this so that it's as heavy or as light as we want it to be. We can drag and drop that in the user interface later. Let's just leave it at 0 for now. We also will want to close comments on this. Since it's a web form, we don't really need people commenting on the web form or the hours of operation. We also don't need to promote it to the front page. So let's go ahead and fix those things as well while we're in here. Alright, so now that we've added the title and the body and set up the content type, we're taken to the form components for this specific piece of content. Now if we look at our contact page over on the final site, we'll notice that we have text that says reach out, a name, an email, a phone, a text area, and then a select list. So let's go ahead and just add a couple of those fields real quick. To add just a text placeholder, we're actually going to use something called Markup. as the type in web form. And the mandatory field here does not matter in this instance. And we can just add it. And we can just save the component as well. Next is going to be our name field, which will just be text. And we'll make that mandatory. We can set a username to be the default value if we look at tokens. So we can just copy and paste that. Great. And we can hit Save Component. We can do email, special email field, make that mandatory as well. And we can also make this the user email. If someone's logged in, it'll pre-populate, saving them a little bit of typing. And we also have the phone number. So let's go phone, and what do we want to use in this case? We could use number, but then we probably can't use dashes and parentheses and all those things. So it's probably safer just to leave it as a text field in all honesty. In this case, we're not making it mandatory, so we'll just leave it as is. And we can say, you know, for our description, please use the format 555-555-5555. And we have a message here that's a question. What can we help you with? Oh. And that's going to be a text area, and it's going to be required, so it's mandatory. And we'll just leave that as is. And the last thing we have is a question about whether or not they want to get email marketing from us. Would you like to join the list? And here we're going to say select options. And we're going to make that required as well. It's important to note that working with options, you need key value pairs. So you see here that it's some safe key, so no spaces, underscores only, followed by a pipe, and then some readable option. So let's go ahead and add the ones that we have here. We'll just copy them and paste them in. All right, so we have yes, so let's just say Y for that, A for already, and N for no. And then we'll save. Great, so that takes care of that. Additionally, we'll want to be notified when an email gets sent. So if we go to emails, we can say that we want it to go to a specific email. In this case, we'll make it go to the admin email for the site. We could also send it to the email field so we can notify the person who submitted the form that we'll get back with them soon. And I'll show you how to set this up momentarily. First, let's get the admin notification email going. So we're going there, form submission from contact, default email address, so it's going to come from the user, it's going to come from their name, and then we can paste any information we really want in this area. It could be more formal, or it could just be this plain blob. For admins, we'll leave the plain blob. But for our end user, if we use the component value email, we'll probably want to make it a little bit more personal. So email to address is going to be their email. The subject line is going to be, thanks for reaching out. It'll come from our email. And the email name will be Dropworks team. And let's make it a little bit more user-friendly. So using tokens, we can really get something robust and fun here. And for now, we're just going to say hello, name. So this will be the name they enter, right? We can look at it here. Follow this pattern of value key. So we're going to say hello, whoever. Thanks for contacting us. A representative of our team will be in touch shortly. Great. We've added a custom template. We can go ahead and we can save that email. So that's set up. But we also probably want to thank them for submitting the form on screen. So if we go over to form settings, we can make a custom confirmation message. Probably just use the same thing. And you know what? Let's style that a little bit differently. Let's go ahead and make it a H2, heading 2. And we'll also be sure to make it a full HTML so that it renders correctly. You could also pass them to a specific page, reload the form. This would be helpful if you were using web form for data entry for admin users or staff users. We can also limit the total number of submissions. We can limit the total number of submissions per person. And we can open and close the form. And we can also restrict access to the form to just authenticated users or just anonymous users or whatever. We also have some advanced settings so that we can make these available as blocks, have drafts be saved, do a whole bunch of other things, or change the submit button text. And in this case, we have the submit button text to be custom send request. So let's go ahead and add that. And we don't really care if they're notified about previous submissions. So let's turn that off and click Save Configuration. Great. And if we go back and view, there we have it, our contact page web form. Oh, something's not right. Let's go back and fix this. Our reach out doesn't actually show anything. It's because we didn't add a value. So let's go ahead, let's go in here and make it say reach out. Now that we have reach out rendered on the page. Great. Let's just test it and see if it works, just for the fun of it. There we go. We got our message. We can go back to the form if we want. And just to confirm, I did get both emails, one for the administrator and one for the person submitting the form. So that's a review of web forms. So now we need to discuss the more complicated nature and appearance of the site. And to do so, we'll do this in the next video, where we'll discuss views and panels.